Hello everyone, this is In-Game Art with a little boxing and an offline product game review. This is Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 for the PlayStation 5. To jump right into it, this physical copy here comes with 7 games on one disc. Now each game is treated as its own individual piece. You get to pick and choose which one you would like to install into your console, which is extremely nice in case you're working with limited hard drive space or you're only interested in playing one of the 7 games. Now, each individual game is its own piece, has its own downloads and updates and stuff like that. Now, which each piece is, there is the bonus content, which comes with like a mini soundtrack, 2 extra games, the original Metal Gear from the NES or Nintendo Entertainment System, Snake's Revenge, as well as a graphical novel. Disappointingly, the graphical novel is only available via download, so it's not on the disc, which again is extremely disappointing, as well as like the video content and everything like that isn't on the disc either. You only got the Metal Gear, NES, and Snake's Revenge and the MIDI soundtrack on disc for this individual the bonus content. Also, the bonus content does not include trophy support, so Metal Gear, NES, and Snake's Revenge does not have trophy support, which again is a disappointing sight to see. The next one is the classics, as I will call it, which is Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 for the MSX. These are still done by Bluepoint Games. The original, when they did the HD remaster for like Xbox 360 and PS3. This is just them porting their version over onto disc and just upgrading it from there. These games, again, is the same thing, just those 2 games with trophy support. Up next is Metal Gear Solid. When you install this comes with Metal Gear Solid 1 for the PlayStation 1, as well as Metal Gear Solid VR Training. These do come with some trophy support. Now this one is not really done by Bluepoint Games. This is more of a port from the original game with an emulator built in to make the game run, which they do a pretty decent job. They have the memory card slot and everything like that to allow you to put in memory cards from their other Konami games, which is a special moment within Metal Gear Solid 1 where they read your memory card. I'm glad they did something to include that into the game, which is a nice little detail to include. And as well as the trophy support, as well as include the VR. Now, there's also other iterations, like the Japan version and stuff like that, which is not on the disc. Disappointingly, you have to download that. Up next, in terms of games to be able to install, there is Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, the Substance version of the game. So it just comes with an extra content and features and so forth that the game didn't have when it first released. The Substance version was like basically a Game of the Year edition or Complete Edition back in the PlayStation 2 era. Well, this is still done by Bluepoint Games, so this has the enhancements and HD quality as well as trophy support, which is extremely nice to see. And once again, this does come with like the US version, the Europe version, but it does have the Japan version, but it's not on the disc. You have to download that one, which is disappointing. I don't know why this seems to be a pattern with the Japan version of the Metal Gear games. Moving on, the next game to be able to install is Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. This is the Substance version of the game, which, as I explained before, is like the Game of the Year edition, Complete Edition that was released for the PlayStation 2 at the time. And it just comes with other features and contents and so forth. And as well, it is the Bluepoint Games version as well, so there's trophy support, HD enhancements, and so forth. And it's just the complete package of the entire thing. Now, this is going through all the collections of the games. I will go into detail about each individual game. I just wanted to let you know what each installment is and what you're able to getting. And it does include like Europeans and American versions, but most of anything that has anything to do with Japan download or anything like that, it's just mostly downloading everything. I don't know why the Japan versions of Metal Gear Solid must be downloaded and it's not on disc. That is frustrating and disappointing. So now we can go into a little bit more details about everything. I do want to put the cards on the table and immediately admit that while I did beat Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3, I did play a majority of the NES and the Snake's Revenge, as well as the MSX ones of Metal Gear 2. I did not beat them. I just basically ran through and make sure everything's working, ever tested and everything like that. I wasn't ultimately that interested in investing in it, and that's probably something I would do later in my life. I know for a lot of people are probably just mostly interested in Metal Gear Solid 1, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Metal Gear Solid 3, so I really wanted to run through those games and truly test them. Now, I do want to point out that while the games like always, I play all my games completely offline with an unregistered account, and I didn't experience any massive game-breaking bugs or any issues that prevented me from progressing. There was still some oddities and things that's noteworthy on my notepad, as well as there was downloads for each individual game. So please bear with me. There's a lot of information, a lot of stuff, and everything like that. I try to get through it as timely and as appropriate as I possibly can. Now, the first one was the bonus content. As I said, it did not have trophy support. There was an update available. This update size was 200 megabytes big and will take you to version 1.30 at the time making this video. Moving on, we have the Metal Gear Classics, which is Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2 for the MSX. This did have trophy support. It did have an update. This update was 310 megabytes, and it will be version 1.30 at the time of this video. Moving on, we had Metal Gear Solid 1. Now, this on-disc version is 1.0. Now, all of these games is 1.0 on the version. They're just the base vanilla version of the game. This did have an update. This update size was 103 megabytes big and will take you to version 1.30 since the time of making this video, and it did have trophy support. Okay, moving on. We have Metal Gear Solid 2, which again is the vanilla version. It did have an update, which was 382 megabytes. It will take you to version 1.30 since the time of making this video, and it did have trophy support. Next, moving up, we have Metal Gear Solid 3, which, again, base vanilla, had an update of 480 megabytes and will take you to version 1.30 and had trophy support. I know there's a lot of repeating myself, but I wanted to make it very clear. All of them said they will take you to version 1.30, and everything had around over about, let's say, 100 to 300 megabytes for each game. And the only one that did not have trophy support was the bonus content. I hope that cleared up everything. Now, I did remember reading a news report saying that there will be an update coming around in January, so expect these updates to be bigger down the road. I don't know what version, how big these sizes are going to be, but as I said, I played with all of these without this update, and I didn't come across any game-breaking bugs or issues, so don't feel like this is required for your experience. Now moving on to performance. I'm sorry that was long-winded. We have more to go. We're going to go ahead and talk about Metal Gear Solid 1, because while I did play the Snake's Revenge and the NES Metal Gear and the MSX classics of Metal Gear 1 and 2, I didn't see any issues or problems with what I played. Like as I said, I didn't beat them, but I really didn't see any problems or issues throughout my time playing it. But I wanted to point out Metal Gear Solid 1, and that was the one that I did notice some more issues compared to all the rest of these games. First off, I do want to point out some misinformation or some things that people might find a bit confusing. There is a moment in a character in the game called Johnny, and in the original Metal Gear Solid 1, there's a character who knocks out Johnny and takes his clothes. Now, in the original Metal Gear Solid 1, the character behind, let's just call that, his rump is censored out, pixelated. While in this version here, he's no longer pixelated. His rump or bottom is now have boxers on. I have seen some people confused with this and think this is a sign of censorship. I want to point this out. This is not censorship. Actually, this is uncensoring. The game always had Johnny wearing boxers. The only thing is that I guess at the time when Metal Gear Solid 1 came out, they were concerned that seemed very, I don't know, risque, I guess. So they censored out his rump and put it pixelated. But what was funny was that the pixelation was so strong that it actually blurred out his boxers and it made him look naked. So for a lot of people, it looked like Johnny was naked and didn't actually have boxers on. So it had raised the point of, what do you think they should have done? If they left it uncensored, then it would look censored. If it was censored, for a lot of people, it looked like more uncensored. It is a very interesting dilemma, wondering what people's stance on this subject will be. I am particularly glad that they uncensored it, because the original work showed Johnny wearing boxers, and that is the original work, so show him wearing the boxers. But I understand some people's confusion and frustration of this alteration, because it makes it actually look like the game was censored. I hope that was explanational, because just to let you know, it's not censorship, it's actually uncensored. which is nice. I'm glad they uncensored the original work. There was some audio pops in Metal Gear Solid 1. Like, occasionally the audio would pop and everything like that. Nothing crucial, but I could see some audio people having some annoyance with this. As well as that one moment when the military defense person was talking to me, the audio popped and all the audio was coming out of my right speaker. So that was weird. As well as some minor graphical bugs. Now, I want to point out that this was clearly just due to the emulation. They clearly built an emulator to be able to run this. I don't know, it's very rudimentary and it's very basic emulation. I remember seeing some of these graphical issues and audio issues when I tried out emulators on my PC, so I could tell this was just a very basic emulator. Now, some might be annoyed that this is just PlayStation 1 version of the game with no enhancements to the experience, which I could fully understand that frustration and disappointment, and though I am personally glad that they left it authentic as possibly can be, I am a little disappointed that the emulator is the bare bones. I've seen some very amazing emulators nowadays where they bump the resolution to 4K, smooth out the animation, smooth out the graphics to get rid of the checkerboard or the stutter look on the visual appearance. Now, I particularly love PlayStation 1's graphics as they originally were, but I can understand some people's disappointment of the low effort in terms of the overall emulator. Now, I don't want to get on too long on everything. We have Metal Gear Solid 2. We've already covered about the updates and all this other stuff. There was no really graphical issues other than the mouth movement for the voice acting and stuff like that was a bit odd. It didn't match up voice syncing and stuff like that between the characters. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it did become noticeable quite frequently. As well as that, I was disappointed. This applies for Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3. There's no way to back out of the game. The only way I could not, it didn't have like no hub menu to get you back to the main menu of the selecting which version, I guess you would say version you would pick. You would just basically have to open up the game, go to the main menu of PlayStation 5, close out the application, and restart the game. There's no like back out to the main menu of the picking which version of Metal Gear Solid 2 you would like to play. As well as that some people might be a little confused with this one, if you're like the original Metal Gear Solid 2 fan as I am. The coolant spray, it does not work with the square button. They changed this in the Blue Points HD remaster, where instead of the square button, you use the right joystick. You push up on the right joystick to spray with the spray gun. I'm just saying this in case some people get confused and think the game is there a bug, but really, they just changed it from instead of square, you just push up on your right joystick. As well as that, just a little information, if you're pointing a gun at somebody and you don't want to unequip the gun, if you push the R3 button, this will lower the gun when you're aiming it. As well as that if you're not aiming it, if you push the R3, you can aim it. Why this is useful is that if you're using the assault rifle, you can't really use that gun pointing it. You have to make sure you push the R3 to point the gun without shooting it. I just want to provide that bit of information because it's a little neat help thing so you don't have to unequip your gun. Moving on to Metal Gear Solid 3. This one had I don't know, it had some noticeable stuff. There was some graphical bugs, very minor, but it was like some facial issues and stuff like that at certain moments. Not a big deal, like eye movement seemed a little bit odd at certain moments, and kind of facial pieces kind of like had some like artifacts. Nothing crucial, but again, it's not how the original work was. As well as mouth movement, once again, was a little bit awkward at times. As I said before, there was no way to back out from the game. You had to just basically open up the PlayStation 5, close out the application, and restart the game. There was no way to go back to the main menu of the game, of the startup of the program. As well as I did have some weird issues of where when I was like crawling on the ground with Solid Snake, I would just immediately start pointing my gun, even though I didn't point the gun with my gun, push the button to point my gun. So just be careful with that, because you'll be like lay down, and all of a sudden your character will point the gun, and when you point your gun, you can't crawl. So this is why I wanted to bring up about the R3 button. If you find Snake pointing the gun, and you want him to lower the gun without unequipping the gun, push the R3 button. This will lower the gun, and if your gun's lowered and you push the R3, it will raise the gun. Helpful in case you just get stuck with that situation. Just helpful advice. As well as that, this is from the original game, so I do remember it. The game was a bit blurry. I do know that they did this in the original one, and then the HD remaster that they did for PS3 and 360 was a bit blurry, but I was really hoping with this Master Collection they would have cleared up a bit of that blurriness, especially on the chase scene where you're running away from the Shagohod or from the woods. It's very blurry at certain moments. I think I can see some people being disappointed for that HD quality not being there as main clarity in terms. Now, that's pretty much it. I know that was very long-winded, but you gotta remember we had 7 games and many things to talk about. Now, as I said, there's no real issues. Nothing preventing me from progressing. I was still gathering up dog tags on Metal Gear Solid 2. I went through the game without killing a single person. I did that with Metal Gear Solid 3. I was picking up the frogs and all this other stuff. No issues popped up. So, again, that's extremely nice to see. This is still a phenomenal physical collection to have on your shelf. It is also just extremely disappointing that there is so much content that is not actually on the disc in terms of everything being downloaded, like I said, the soundtrack, graphical novels, videos. You can't even look at the manuals of the games without going to the internet. Again, that's very disappointing. This game only takes up like 25 gigabytes total with everything on your console. This is a 100 gigabyte disc. You could have easily fitted all this content on the disc without needing to download. So that's extremely disappointing. But at the end of the day, we're all here for the games. And all the games looked, played, and felt really good. Other than the minor little issues that I experienced throughout the game, there was just those few little things. I also do want to point out those who may be confused with the European version and the US version of these Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3. From what I can gather from researching it, it just seems like the European version is a little bit censored compared to the American version. There's just less blood. Like if you shot someone, blood would splatter against the wall, blood would be flowing off of them for a few animations. That maybe got a little bit turned down a little bit in the European version. But for the European version, they did have a higher difficulty called European Extreme, where if you get caught, it's immediately game over. But since this is the substance versions of both Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, those European difficulties are on the US version. So unless you really have a fondness of the censored version, there's really no reason to play the European version if you're in the European region. You might as well just play the American version if you want the most authentic version of the games. Now, it is disappointing, like I said, all the Japan versions are not on the disc. I don't know why. That seems very odd. I wonder if this applies for the Japan version of the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection, Volume 1. It just seems odd that you would not include that on disc. It's just, you had all this room, why have it download? But regardless, at least the entire package is fairly decent. I'm really glad that we finally got a collection of Metal Gear games. It's been crazy how long it's been since we've had any iterations of Metal Gear games, and as well as extremely nice to see Metal Gear Solid 1 get a new print run. That was one thing that I was really happy with, because that's a game that only had one print run on the PlayStation 1, as well as the VR missions, so a new physical copy version of the game, which still worked and played, other than the few minor issues I talked about. It still was an enjoyable experience. I'm very nostalgic with this game. I grew up playing it back in the day, and I could go on and on about all the things I love, but this video is already going for a very long time with a bunch of information, a bunch of stuff to show you in video and content and everything like that. I don't want it to end up being a super long video. I just wanted to provide you all the information I experienced in the game. Hopefully it was very straightforward and clear. It's just a lot of information, a lot of stuff I had to gather and up and everything like that. Hopefully this video was very helpful. Should you pick it up? Wholeheartedly, yes. It is a great collection. I'm hoping that we see more collections like this, and not just from Metal Gear Solid or Konami. I would greatly love to see something like this from maybe Capcom, Square Enix, whoever, like Resident Evil collection of the original PlayStation 1 games and stuff like that. As much as I enjoy remakes and stuff like that, like Metal Gear Solid 3 getting a remake, I still love the originals, and I want the originals to get preserved more with more physical copies of the original work, and still make your remakes. That way, if the remake has any issues, you can go back to the original. If you feel like that the original could really use a remake, go to the remake. You have both, and I always like options and choices. So like always, thank you all so much for watching. I will try to leave links down in the description if you're instant copy. I recommend it. I had literally no problems other than a few minor issues. It was just an enjoyable experience for me. So like always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next unboxing video. Bye-bye!